To the students that have just joined, we'll be starting at 6:05. Please sit tight.
That'll be all right. Yeah. Important down the bottom of the pages. Out of the way, of your picture, of your profile picture now, so we'll see it. That's pretty. Just had to join the No Smiling Club with Steve and Phyllis. And smiles. But another one as well where it was like, he smiled at the dudes feels changing. Okay.
Alrighty, it's 6:05. I guess we'll just start. So again, before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Vejiku and Gadigal people of whose land UNSW currently resides on. And I'd also like to extend my respects to both elders past, present, and emerging with us in this Zoom call. So again, thank you for attending. And welcome to all UNSW students. I'm Charles. I'm currently an architecture graduate and the current president of BESA. And with me today, I've got three people that have generously spent their time to put this together. They are Rob, Lucas, and Eric. And I hope you enjoy their session on project management and hopefully you guys get a lot of insight. So I'll just hand it over to you guys.
Hey everybody who's attended, my name's Lucas. Rob on my right here, Eric on my left. Today Charles has asked us to run through basically who we are, what our career path, university path, who Capital Insight actually is, and then go into a bit about the projects, give you guys some advice, and then answer a whole lot of questions that have come through, which is great. So I'll just pass over to Rob, who's our director, as you can see there, and he'll just give you a bit of information, history about Capital Insight.
Okay, thank you. And then welcome everybody. So Capital Insight is what we call an advisory and project management firm. And advisory in terms of services delivery relates to undertaking tasks such as business cases for government associated with the project, feasibility studies, etc. Some of the lead-in planning work that actually justifies a project. So that in our language is an advisory service. And then a project management firm obviously is a firm that the services we undertake are associated with the delivery of a project.
Yes, this might help.
Yeah, so we have a diagram that illustrates, I suppose, the range of services that we undertake, and that commence on, if you like, what we call the asset cycle for a particular project. So starting off with services strategy, asset performance, and what generates the need for what ultimately becomes a project. It can be the fact that there's a changing need around services strategy and in health land or university land. There's a new course, there's expanding priorities in regard to research, there's extra teaching, there's different modes of teaching. In hospitals, there's increased patients, there's changes in health treatment and modalities of healthcare, etc. So all of those things are changes which lead to the need for something to happen. The third string to that bow is asset performance. And how is the assets performing at the moment? Assets can age, the compliance issues, whether or not the assets comply with current code or current standards or what's needed to generate a funding grant, etc. in the university land. All those things drive the need for something to happen. The cycle that then follows is around planning your needs. So strategic planning, or what we call service planning. That's not services as in engineering services, that's services in how that entity delivers the services to their clients. And we get involved in understanding and helping them define what that is and what they need to do in the future. Feasibility studies is a measure of undertaking the cost benefit associated with any particular project. And when in government projects, which we do a lot of, and that's one of our core areas, there are rules around the extent of feasibility studies, what they do and they have to cover, etc. And we help prepare those documents. The next arrow around is the green box. We start talking about project planning and business cases. So we're getting more definition around the project. We're undertaking what we call master planning or facility planning. So we're actually starting to get to some sort of definition around what a project starts to look about. How big is it? How does it fit within the site? Is it a renewal? Is it a brand new project? Can you change an existing building, etc.? Business cases and economic and financial appraisals are again another specific and defined activity within universities and within government to actually put up the business case that says, yes, it's worth me spending X dollars because I'm going to get 2X return over the next 20 years, 30 years, or whatever the ratio is, but there's a measure around the benefits of a particular project. Again, that's an advisory service. When we start getting into procurement and transactions, that could be a PPP projects, and we have been involved in advising on PPP projects for government, but it can also be about procuring consultants, it can be about procuring contractors and managing that whole process and how we do that. Project delivery, have the more defined tasks around what you would expect a consultant team to undertake designers, whether it's architects, engineers, and a whole lot of other technical consultants defining the needs or the specific requirements of a project, and that goes through a number of phases. And typically within the built environment, which are buildings, and rather than infrastructure, which we call more roads and rail, etc. Within the built environment, there's processes that you go through there around an increasing level of detail and an increasing level of documentation to define your needs, your tender contracts, we award contracts, we administer contracts as superintendents sometimes as project managers or principals representatives, etc. And that's the core phase of project management. And then there's also asset management. So after you've finished the building, there's commissioning tasks, there's ongoing facility management tasks, how the client runs the building, how they service the building, etc. We get involved in helping them set those activities up or those tasks, and then look at a life cycle analysis around buildings and potentially feed back into the start of the next project or the next phase of development as well. So from a company point of view, Capital Insight does all of those services, and some of those are advisory roles and some of those are project management roles. And we've been doing that within what we call the social infrastructure sector, which is health, education, research, aged care. They're sort of the core areas, a little bit of justice, some defence, etc. So they're the social services sector, as distinct from, as I said earlier, the other infrastructure, transport infrastructure, which is road, rail, etc. We do not get involved in those elements, because that's part of our business case and our business strategy around what it is we do. And I'll talk about that and some of the issues, the questions that are in. There's a reason why we do that as well.
Sure. I guess a bit closer to home for you guys is some of the projects just that we've done at UNSW. Thought it might be interesting to some of you guys, so we'll get to that, and Rob might be able to give you some info on each one.
Yeah. So the Tyree Energy Technologies building, we got there was an original design competition for that the university ran, because it's what the university call a gateway site, i.e. at the entrance to a major entrance from Anzac Parade. There was a significant design competition for that building, and we got involved after the designers were selected. Ultimately, we managed the project from that point on all the way through many of those phases that I've spoken about, but basically the design, the definition, the tendering, award, and building completion, commissioning, and handover to the university. The Hilmer building and the adjoining science and engineering building, we finished those last year, and they're obviously fantastic projects, adding significantly to that lower campus and the science and engineering capacity of the university. So mine, the IMI theatre within the science and engineering building and the podium that's there now. At the top of the hill, the biological sciences building, that's the refurbished the old building, which we stripped back to essentially a bare shell and refitted. And then we do have a photo of the other one.
No, I don't.
No, okay. And then on Botany Street, there's also the new biological sciences building we did as well. So we did stage 1 and stage 2 there. The roundhouse refurbishment finished about 2 years ago now, and the whole public domain around the roundhouse, and the new walkway out to the light rail, which is on the left-hand side of this diagram here as you go past.
Yeah. I think it's worth pointing out as well, in case anyone's a bit confused, I guess where...
Sorry, Charles is Catriona is waiting in the...
Yep, I've got it.
You got it?
Yeah, done.
I think it was just worthwhile clarifying or pointing out is we are, as a project management company, engaged by someone like you, a client like UNSW, and from there we go, and a lot of the disciplines that you guys are currently studying, architecture, different consultants like engineers, we engage them on behalf of the university, to design the building, and then from there we then go out to tender to a builder who's then going to build the building, engage them and manage them through construction to the end product, which you can see on these here. I just thought I'd try to simplify it a little bit because I know it confused me early on as well.
Yeah.
And so when we talk through the next few steps, that might help your understanding as well in terms of our career paths. So getting to career paths myself, I went to uni at UNSW through 2014 to 17. I completed the Built Environment, Construction Management and Property course. I think back then it took obviously four-ish years, so I was hardly ever at uni. I went straight in to work for FTC Construction and Fit Out as a builder. So I worked for them for 3.5 years while I was at uni. I only really needed to be at uni 1 to 2 days a week, which was nice because you get the practical experience alongside of what you were learning at uni. And then I've jumped across to Capital Insight, been here for 2.5 years to date. Over those kind of 6 years that I've been in the industry so far, I've worked on about 13 different projects, ranging from warehouses to data centres, car showrooms, a bus depot, a hotel and horse stables at Warwick Farm, a couple of university buildings, and then a hospital emergency department. And through those, I guess for the builder, I was a construction cadet. That's where I started and where most people start, and made my way through into kind of a contract administrator role and a site engineer role. And then for Capital Insight, I've been an assistant project manager.
So very similar to Lucas, I started my career as a construction cadet at UTS. So, and like Lucas, I was working part-time. So I was working for Group Contractors who don't exist anymore. They were bought out by Lend-Lease shortly after I left them, two unrelated things. But yeah, I graduated in 2010 and had worked on a couple of different projects with Group. They weren't particularly targeted at different sectors like what Capital Insight are, like what Rob has just said about the social infrastructure space. But I have valued the kind of technical kind of skills that you pick up when you are working when you're working full-time really and studying part-time. The degree at UTS was construction project management. Or when I started, it was just a Bachelor of Construction, and when I was majoring in project management, and by the time I graduated, they changed the course name to construction project management. But I still had a major in project management, so there's lots of PMs on the official title. And then after 6 years of working for Group across a variety of different projects, I came across to Capital Insight, and I've been working here ever since. 9 years, it's been a while, yeah. Go to the next one for us, Lucas. So in terms of the type of projects, I was early this year able to tick off the $1 billion mark on projects that I've personally worked on and delivered for clients across both Group and Capital Insight.
Geez, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I can't imagine anyone with more than that, Rob. So Rob's about to show me up a lot on his slides, so I thought I'd try and get in with at least some value here. So yeah, I worked on mixed use residential, so that's kind of apartment buildings on top of retail space, on top of car parks, major commercial and retail facilities, so commercial buildings down at Sydney Airport, which is that bottom right one, which you would have seen if you come out of the international terminal down there, the AFP are in that building at the moment. Hospitals with Capital Insight, research buildings with Capital Insight, and university buildings as well. So as I mentioned, I started as a construction cadet and progressed to a site engineer while on the contractors side. And then with Capital Insight, I've come through as an assistant project manager and project manager, and now have an SPM role. It's probably worth mentioning that, you know, as far as the time spent on a lot of those projects, so, you know, that wheel that Rob showed before, only one portion of that wheel, the red one, was what I worked on when I worked for a contractor. So just the implementation side. And with the projects of this size, which are kind of normally at least $50 million plus, but $100 million plus, mainly ones that I've worked on, that's normally 18 to 24 months. So kind of, about 2 years. But the rest of those wheels is at least, in most cases, double what the actual build period is.
Twice as long, yeah. So the planning and advisory and the justification phase pre what we call project management, and different clients define the line between an advisory role and a project management role by different levels of definition, and we can talk about that later as a question. But yeah, so it can easily be double.
Yeah. So the project which Lucas and I most recently worked on at Macquarie University, that top left photo there, I was fortunate enough to be working on that from the very beginning. So from the beginning of that wheel, because we had a lot of early works and decanting and whatnot to do, and that ended up, I was involved with that project for 4 years, and it'll be 5 years by the time the defects liability period is over. The actual build with the main contractor on site was less than 2 years of that. So there is a lot more to putting together a project than I, as a contractor, when I worked on the contractor side, had really appreciated. I knew there was a lot of front end work, but the actual duration and the amount of work that goes into it outside of the actual build process was something that I definitely underestimated, and is something which I value being involved in now. I think that's kind of a great part about project management as a discipline, that you can be involved in the coalface, in the actual building, the tactile building, and having a physical result. But there's also opportunity to be involved in the major decisions and the planning and the strategy that actually makes the choices of how big is this building, where does it go, what does it look like, who's in it, those type of things. So,
what's in it?
Yeah,
what is in a building? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are kind of things which I've really valued working as a project manager, rather than as a construction manager for a builder.
Okay, so my background in terms of university, UNSW alumni as well, way back in the 80s. Hence I'm allowed to have a little bit of grey hair. When I started University of New South Wales actually offered a part-time course. It was over 6 years. It actually took me 7. That was because I was a bit slow, but in mechanical engineering, and I did that. So I went to university 2 afternoons and 4 nights a week. I was doing more hours part-time than Lucas was doing when he was doing it full-time. I had the joy of being at work in North Sydney at 8 o'clock every morning, running at 5 o'clock to catch a train, catch a bus, to be at the uni by 6 o'clock, to go to lectures till 9:30, to run to catch a bus, to get to the train, to get home by 10:30, to get up in the morning and do it all over again. And I don't know where I did study, but that's ultimately part of the drive that you have when you want to do something and you're in an industry you enjoy. And that was, yes, it's a long road, 7 years doing that, and then I went back for more. I actually did a graduate diploma in business management and a master's in applied finance as well. So I've spent 13 years studying at all of those sort of part-time and working at the same time. So there's a big commitment in that. And one of the questions I'll talk about now that I get asked when I interview people is, what about post-grad work study? When should I do it? And I'm strongly of the view that you do it once you've got some experience behind you, when you can apply more what you're learning better, and that's hopefully answers a question that might be coming up later. So career path, I started off at Transfield when they actually built projects rather than it was called a Transfield Services, but Transfield used to build stuff. And I swapped across from that into a company called Grosvenor Place. So that's the building in town. I was on that for 4 years, Chifley Tower for 2 years. Then I worked on the whole East Circular Quay project for 10 years. And then I've been in Capital Insight now for 20 years. So, haven't swapped around a lot of jobs, but I've progressed through that. So, types of projects, I've tried to add up. I think I'm well north of $7 billion on projects that I've managed over that time. I started off in infrastructure projects, that's what Transfield did. So at the top there, and coal handling facilities, that's Kooragang Island coal loader. Some of those actually machines there, I actually worked on those. I had some fun with that. Power stations, the one on the top right is cement works, then swapped over to commercial buildings, and the Grosvenor Place and Chifley Tower projects, and then East Circular Quay, and then swapped across to Capital Insight, and there's hospitals, Concord there, Gold Coast University Hospital, $1.7 billion. Another hospital we've got there on the third row, and then 3 university buildings on the bottom row. So I started off as a trainee engineer, and I had the conversation with Charles. One of my first day on my job, I was folding drawings, and that's when the drawings were actually pieces of paper. What my job was managing the issue of drawings and revisions to the fabrication shop to actually fabricate the steel that went into that coal loader at the top of the thing. And top of the images there, and my job was effectively managing the control of information into the yard. That was it. So it was all about learning what about documentation control. The very basic level was all about contract administration, project manager, project director, and been director at Capital Insight now for 12 odd years or so.
And then there was a couple of questions that Charles gave us, or to just give you guys some advice prior to getting into the questions. And so we'll all kind of have a bit of an answer to each one of these. The first one, how did you get to where you are now, and what skills are needed for your current role / future role? I had a real simple kind of answer to that. It's work hard, show commitment, and be willing to learn. You can never ask too many questions, but at the same time, don't ask the same question too many times. It means you're not really learning the first time you're told. And then, yeah, I guess that's my answer to that.
You would agree? Yeah.
Yep. So how did I get to where I am now? I mean, I fell into the construction industry to start with. I didn't finish high school thinking I was going to be in construction. None of my family's in construction, but a guy came to one of my careers days in year 12 who ended up being the estimating manager for Abbey Group and said, "Oh, we've got a cadetship thing." And I liked the idea, the way that he pitched it, where it was half, engineering and numbers type of thing, logic and that type of, technical skill, but also half people skills. And so that appealed to me at the time, and that's what's appealed to me over my whole career, really. And I've been well satisfied with both of those. So I think that, roles with contractors, with project managers, with, consultants, I think that the whole industry really kind of, revolves around those two sets of skills. You've got technical skills that you can excel at and be interested in and be interested in developing. But if you neglect the people skills as well, being able to communicate, being able to, explain yourself, being able to articulate particular concepts, being able to read people, I think that it's a missing piece if you don't develop those. So really those are, sort of two things that attracted me to the industry in the first place, and they're the things that still keep me here now.
Yeah, okay. So from my point of view, how did I get here, in terms of the process? But I swapped from the infrastructure type roles into commercial buildings, and then you can look at that and go, wow, that's a jump sideways. It's something completely different. And that was solely because one of the guys I'd worked with at Transfield, he was involved in the contract administration of Grosvenor Place. He said, "Oh, why don't you come and get involved in that?" Well, that sounds like a good idea. That's something different and exciting, and sort of did that, and started going through the commercial projects sphere, and got into Chifley Tower. I was 28 years old, and I was actually in charge of Chifley Tower, which was a $400 million project at the time. Because I demonstrated, some of the skills that I'll talk about in a moment, that how you deal with people and learn to manage those particular issues. And from that, I got involved in East Circular Quay, and at the time in the 90s, there was a lot of protests on Opera House steps. How dare you build something next to the Opera House when actually there were buildings there before the Opera House was built? But I went through that for 10 years, and at the end of that, I was sort of like, wow, I was exhausted because it was a long project to do that. It took us 6 years to get through the processes before we could start building, just to get approvals to do the job, and part of my role was helping to manage all those types of issues, approvals through council and state governments, etc. I sort of said, well, you know, what do I want to do going forward? I want to do something different. I don't want to keep doing these types of projects. I want to do something that makes a little bit of difference to the way people live, etc. And Capital Insight fitted that mould perfectly, because you know, the social infrastructure projects, you know, one of the benefits of doing the types of projects we do for our clients is you get a huge amount of satisfaction about what you deliver. And first thing, and secondly, when the project hits a dark valley, and sometimes it does, you know, sometimes you've got to roll up your sleeves and you're here till midnight trying to solve a problem or write a report or put a tent together or whatever it is that you're doing, you know. But you know, it's hard to do those and to do those for a long period. But when you're working on a project that you know is going to make a difference to somebody's life, either whether it's in education or whether or not it's in research and, you know, groundbreaking research, or whether or not it's in health, and, you know, it means the difference between someone living and someone dying, well, hey, you get a lot of satisfaction out of that. You know, that's one of the things that sort of drove me to get into, you know, the type of projects and the roles and the companies, etc. that you know, I did. So in terms of skills needed, you know, the fundamental principle of project management is managing expectations. Managing your client's expectations in terms of what it is that they're going to get, etc. Managing expectations around, you know, what you want a contractor to do and what you don't want them to do. Managing expectations of the design team members in terms of what they're doing. So fundamental principle of project management is your ability to relate to other people and with a team. You know, no one project is ever delivered by one person. A project is delivered by a team, and you know, the role of a project manager is important. The parallelism is an orchestra. A conductor conducts the orchestra, and if you know, if he isn't conducting properly, the music's going to sound pretty damn horrible. But you know, but the roles of everybody in our orchestra is just as important as the conductor. You know, project management is very much like that in lots of instances. You know, we're the conductor of the whole team, and in terms of who does what when and what you're asking them to do, etc. But you know, it's all the roles of the design consultants and the specialist consultants or the planners who, you know, help get planning approval, or the contract team, etc. And that's the challenge, and how you relate to people and how you get the best out of them for them to do it. That's the challenge, and that's one of the core skills around your roles. So.
All right, so the next question is, what do you project the built environment industry to head towards? We had a quick discussion about this earlier, and I actually think Derek has the best answer to it. So I'm going to can't beat this, so I'm going to palm that one off.
Right, thanks. I can't remember what it was.
Technology.
Oh, yeah, right. So, you know, one of the, you know, in kind of the post kind of COVID world, and, you know, and in, you know, we're we're well into the 21st century now, as well. You know, the type of roles and the type of jobs that will be available in the built environment industry are, I think, developing and changing. So Rob used an example of what he did on his first, you know, his first day as a job, you know, folding plans. You know, on Lucas and our last job, there were no plans. There were no large physical paper plans in the builder's office.
Still did that 4 years ago.
Yeah, Lucas still did it 4 years ago, but you know, we're seeing changes. So, you know, the way that they did it on the project we just finished is it was all digital. They had a large plan bench that was a TV. They all had iPads, and they had a system online where all the drawings were stored and were linked together. So you didn't have to page through drawings trying to get from your floor plan to a section plan. You just click a hyperlink on the floor plan, it'll take you straight to the section plan. It's very efficient. There was still a cadet looking after that, you know, keeping it up to date. But the time that he spent doing that was like a day a week. Whereas, you know, I know when I was coming through the construction, you know, field, on one job, that was my full-time job, to keep the drawing plans up to date, get them printed, put them on the sticks for other people to look at. So technology is constantly kind of making small sectors of the construction industry a little bit more efficient, but there needs to be kind of guidance and strategy around how that's happening. You can deploy a whole bunch of widgets that you think are going to get your building built in half the time, but that's not reality. The construction industry is each project is too unique, there's too many variables. You'll never be able to replace a human brain looking after those tools. So I think that where the built environment industry is heading more towards people that can think critically and align these new tools to what the actual outcomes and goals on a project is going to be. As I said, there's no point in deploying, kind of 2 or 3 nifty little tools if they actually aren't achieving one of your key outcomes. If one of your key outcomes is to control how a builder does a certain activity, or to, make sure that certain members of your client team are providing the right inputs and timely input onto documentation. There's half a dozen different ways to do that, and it's up to project managers, builders, architects to be able to engage with those new bits of technology and make sure they are used effectively. And you're never going to be able to replace that, I think. So, I think it's a more encouraging and more kind of future-rich industry to be in than, say, straight up, manufacturing. I think that'll get automated, down to as far as it can go. I think the built environment is going to become more and more an industry of professionals and of critical thinkers, and fewer kind of less grunt work. I think the more grunt work and more kind of elbow grease work is going to be replaced by bits of technology along the way. But having said that, the construction industry has historically and will continue to be a very slow industry to adapt to those. Just because of, I think, some of the dollar values involved in going wrong with some of those technologies. So it'll be a slow process, but I think it'll be gradual and persistent.
And one of the advantages of technology that and the advances that Eric was talking about is opportunities around off-site manufacturing. One of the biggest challenges we have on projects, and one of the biggest tasks that we as project managers leading projects, is ultimately making sure that we get the quality of product at the end of the day that we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the day. And opportunities for off-site manufacturing, which is more cost-effective than on-site manufacturing, on-site construction, are really, really important. And you can see the industry talking about, seeking to develop towards more off-site manufacturing.
High quality as well.
Sorry?
High quality.
Yeah, it's higher quality because you can control quality better in a factory than you can on a construction site in lots of instances. Precast concrete is one example of off-site manufacturing at the simplest level. On the SEB building, one of the challenges on the Hilmer building, and there are a lot of services in those buildings. I don't know if you guys have had the chance to have a look at inside some of those buildings, but there is a huge amount of engineering services, gases and other water, different quality of water, etc., that's running through the building to service all those labs. And the actual time taken to run all of that distribution system in the building added significantly to the construction program. So what we did in SEB was thinking, hey, how can we do this better and how can we do it smarter? We did that with the builder, obviously, but a lot of the risers were manufactured in units off-site and brought into site, and and effectively level by level, craned in, put on top of the level below in the risers, and then you weld them together, or you put clamps on, or fix the relevant surface, etc., as was necessary as you went forward. And what that did, it saved months off the construction program by thinking, how can we do this better next time around? And that's part of the challenge that we can look at in buildings.
They do the same thing with bathrooms these days. Bathroom pods. Yeah. They do it all off-site, and they just bring the whole bathroom in.
Yeah. So at Macquarie Uni, we're doing a project at the moment. It's got about 400 student accommodation pods, building rooms, etc. And in that, all the bathrooms were manufactured in Melbourne and brought up and put into the building finished. And that meant that the quality of those bathrooms was a lot better than you would if you had and relied on-site construction of the waterproofing, on-site construction of the sheeting, then the tiling, and then the grouting, and then the guy comes in and puts a shower frame in, and he, the drill slips, and he puts a hole through the wall, and then cracks a tile, and etc. All those things that happen when you're building it through step by step on site is distinct from a high quality controlled environment in a manufacturing plant, for example. So they're the types of things that, in terms of where the industry's heading for trying to do things smarter and more effectively. But the bespoke nature of projects is that projects aren't just the same. They're not all just McDonald's that have the same style, the same layouts, the same whatever for every building. And the more bespoke you are, the more individual need and user needs, the harder it is to fully automate what's going on.
I don't have anything else to add. They nailed it. Question 3, if you could turn back time, what would you have done more of as a student? I had 2 things to say there. I think you don't really get too much to do with, say, the engineering or the architects. Where, from my perspective, when I was doing construction management, I didn't have too much to do. I know there's a couple interdisciplinary courses that you do and you're in classes with them, but you don't have to do too much with them. So I'll just say, try wherever possible to get to know the students in those other disciplines, because you're going to work with them at the end of the day, and you'll see them somewhere in the industry. You'll see names pop up and go, oh, I wonder that person was at uni with me. But try talking to them and see what you can do. Learn off them. And the second was, it's probably not so much, probably can't do it really during COVID, but I was going to say, try to get on as many of the trips as possible throughout uni. I went to China for one course, and just the way that they do things in different countries is, so interesting, and you learn a lot from that as well. So if the borders open back up, try and jump on them.
Yeah, I'll probably echo a little bit of what Lucas said in terms of, because I was I was at uni part-time and working full-time, I didn't get an opportunity to network or build relationships with many relationships with my classmates and my kind of, the we call upperclassmen, and the kind of the guys who are kind of ahead of you and behind you. I think the fact that the people who are in this call are already part of kind of such a group, such a contact group is great and a credit for you, because as Lucas said, it is a pretty small industry. You do see names come around quite often, and it is very, very useful where, as Rob said as well, no one person is ever builds a project, and it's impossible for any one person to have all the answers. And being able to have friendlies in different companies in different parts of the industry, it's invaluable, because we could be building a project that maybe has an aspect that we haven't really seen before, and one of us think, oh, I'm still in touch with a guy who I know is working for a builder, but he did a similar project, more of it, a couple of years ago. I might just ring him and spend 20 minutes on the phone, or catch up for a beer, social distancing permitting, and pick his brain a little bit, and kind of that information transfer is invaluable. And then I think even what Rob said about being able to shift away from one part of the industry and into another, if you find yourself uninterested or being able to pursue opportunities, it's just it's not something that you can buy, and university gives you an absolute plethora of opportunities to get to know your classmates, to keep in contact with them. You've got these type of groups. You've got LinkedIn and all your other socials as well. To be able to keep in touch. So that's something which, coming out of uni, I probably kept in touch with maybe half a dozen or a dozen of my classmates and lecturers. and I'm still in touch with them now and still talk to them more. And I wish I had another dozen because of the value that I get out of those relationships now.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd do differently, given, you know, I was working, you know, effectively full time and going to university 4 nights a week and
party a bit more.
Party a bit more, go to the pub, have a beer. I honestly don't know. You know, I got to the stage where obviously something had to give, you know, and all that social thing. You know, I used to play very competitive sport and quite a lot of sports, but I had to give all that up. But they're parts of the sacrifices you make and the choices you make. And you know, I don't know if I've necessarily done anything different as a student, you know, but you know, obviously I did like it. I did enjoy it. I've done it 3 times now and spent, you know, 13 years studying, but you know, not anymore.
Charles, we might hand over to you. I know there's a lot of questions, so I don't know if you want to. There's 15 minutes, so I don't know how you want to deal with that. I'll hand over.
We'll just see how we go, but I'll just share screen and then go through some of the questions that.
So now share screen.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Yep. All right. All right, submitted questions by students before they registered. So, first question, what is the most challenging part of project management?
I'm going to repeat what Rob said earlier. He said the important thing is managing expectations, but I think that's also the most challenging part because you've got a lot of different parties involved in a project, as everyone said so far, and everyone has different expectations as to the outcome of each project and what they want out of it, and managing those and getting an outcome which a lot of people are happy with, or the main people are happy with, I think is the most challenging part.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, you know, again, I'm relating this to the types of projects that we're involved in. If you look at, you know, a hospital or a research project, for example, you know, you've got in a research lab, you've got a professor or a doctor in that sense of a particular specialty that's, you know, potentially world leading in what it is that they do. You know, they are one of the top, let's pick a number 10, in the top 10 people in the world in that particular sphere of what it is they do. You know, but can they convey what it is they do and what they need at the end of a project? Can they even understand drawings necessarily, or the process that you're going to go through as a project manager in helping them go from a twinkle in someone's eye to a facility that delivers what it is they need to do the research for the next 10 years? But they can't do that, nor you expect them to understand that, because they're specialists in their field and you're a specialist in what you do to help take it, you know, the change from an idea to a reality. So one of the most challenging parts of the role is actually, you know, respecting the fact that everybody is different. Everybody understands things differently. Even no matter how bright they are, a doctor, you know, who does brain surgery, you know, Chris O'Brien, you know, is I don't know if all of you know who Chris O'Brien was, you know, he's a leading brain surgeon in Sydney who died of cancer. And we built a building, we designed a building, and ended up building it at RPA Hospital in Sydney. That's named after him because of the vision he had. He had a vision of how cancer was going to be treated through patients. And what the building ended up doing was facilitating the way cancer is treated than the way it was treated in the past. It's not just about having an operation, it's how the patients are managed and how the processes go through. But, you know, Chris had a twinkle in an eye. He sat in our boardroom, he said, look, this is my vision and this is what I want to try and get to. And we took it from that. That's the start of his brief. And we took it from that to a building, you know, that now delivers, you know, world-leading cancer service. So the most challenging part is understanding how you communicate with people and how you elicit the information out of people to ultimately get to the end solution.
And I mean, in construction, those people, they cover such a spectrum of, you know, of expertise. You know, Chris O'Brien, you know, leading brain surgeon in the world. on the same job, you know, our project manager Liz, you know, would have shouting matches with you know, the plumbing foreman type of thing, who definitely knows how to plumb something, but has got no concept around the greater picture of the building. So knowing your audience, not being able, and not just taking a single, you know, I guess, presentation style or communication style across everyone. It's really challenging, yeah, because you, as Rob said, you need to respect that everyone involved in the project is bringing something unique there and is there for a reason to contribute. And you need to make sure that you are the driving force for inclusion, that you're not trying to force square pegs into round holes.
Yep. I'll just jump over to a question asked by Jin. I want to ask, of all the projects each of you have worked on, which was the most difficult and which were the most fulfilling to complete?
I know which one was probably the most fulfilling for me to complete, and then I'll think about the most difficult one. I did a research project at Westmead Hospital, so the Westmead Millennium Institute at the time, now it's the Westmead Institute for Medical Research. Finished that building and then was fortunate enough to work on that for another probably 12 months or 18 months after it finished, while all of the researchers moved in. And it was a very technically challenging building. There were physical containment labs where they work on very contagious and dangerous viruses, airborne HIV, for example. They were researching in this lab, and you know, we finished that building. It was a bit of a long slog to get them over the line, you know, due to a few different project challenges, which we did end up overcoming. But when the researchers moved in, seeing their what they actually worked on and the type of product which they were producing, they had screens around the building which would say X researcher has achieved this breakthrough, and you know, all of their kind of all their PR and all of their all their applications. I walked around. I echo what Rob said before about, you know, why we're involved in social infrastructure. Seeing exactly what those researchers were able to do with their new facility and the breakthroughs that they were able to make and the differences that was going to make in people's lives, that made, you know, the difficulties in putting that big box filled with services together much more rewarding than previous bigger boxes and buildings that I've done, which were, you know, kind of apartment buildings or shopping centres. So personally, for me, that helped me get up in the morning for the next shoot that we were doing. So
yeah, it's a similar one for me. Actually, it's the current project that I'm on, Bankstown Emergency Department. There's a big difference when you're talking to users, when they're telling you that they need a door to swing a certain way, or that's the example I use all the time. They need that door to swing a certain way to be able to save a life, and that's the big one for me compared to, you know, private guy on the car showroom that I worked on saying he needs this part of his floor to be perfectly polished because he needs it to look good so that he can sell more cars. It's a very different thing, and that was currently is very rewarding.
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, my you know, most rewarding project is definitely the Chris O'Brien Cancer Centre. You know, when I got involved in the project, the other director, managing director, was involved in a lot of the business case and upfront part, and I became involved in, once it became, you know, the funding was available and we started through the more formal design processes, etc. And I went to a board meeting of the Lighthouse board and to present, you know, presenting on something, and Chris's wife, Gail O'Brien, presented to the board, and at the end of it, everyone sort of sat there and was really, really quiet. I thought, wow, that's, you know, she's just, you know, I won't say poured her heart out, but, you know, effectively, you know, poured her heart out in terms of trying to communicate Chris's vision of what the project was to the board. And, you know, and the response, I don't think many people knew how to respond to it. And you know, my comment was that would be fantastic to continually present that presentation to everybody who comes and works on the project. Mm. And, you know, at the end of the project, I was standing out in front of the building, and I don't know if you know, but down in front of it has Chris O'Brien and his name in huge letters right down the front of the building, and Gail was standing out the front crying, just looking at the building. That makes you satisfied. Doing that makes you satisfied, and it gives you huge rewards.
What was the other part of your question, Charles? Challenging?
Oh, so it says, well, one's most difficult and one's fulfilling to complete.
I don't think I have an answer to the difficult.
I think most difficult for me, probably from a technical perspective, was the material science building at UNSW, just because of the high level of detail in those labs, the challenges that Rob said before about having foremost experts in their field and trying to extract what it is they need out of them and have it delivered within the constraints that the university naturally has to place around such projects. You know, I'm not a mechanical engineer or a hydraulic engineer or an electrical engineer, but geez, I had to learn pretty quickly, you know, all the some fine nuances to make sure that the university was getting what it was that they had contracted to provide, and or provide advice to the university as to why what they contracted to provide perhaps falls a little bit short and might need some changes to achieve what their superstar researchers are after. So yeah, I'd say from a challenging point of view, that would be, or a difficulty point of view, that would be right up there on the scale.
Yeah. And challenging and difficult can be different things on projects. And you know, one of the good things about these types of projects is that, you know, no two projects are the same. And you even look at MSC, sorry, I keep saying MSCB, it's Hilmer now, the Hilmer building and SEB, you know, you look at those and think, oh, those two buildings are the same. They are so different inside, you know, and you might even walk around them and think, oh, these buildings look the same inside. You know, the architecture's the same and all that type of stuff. But the way the buildings work and the services that are in there and what the buildings do is fundamentally different. And you know, the challenging on the projects is trying to understand what those differences are, and you know, apply a process and come out, obviously, you know, deliver it on time, to the quality, to budget, and all those other types of things. So yeah, I think it's my broader challenging is more that.
Yep. Well, time's a bit short. I think we'll take 2 more questions. Next one is, well, could you share some information about the career path? Well, you guys have done that. Just elaborate a bit more about where to start from looking for the first job, I suppose, and what are the opportunities out there?
But yeah, the thing with the career path, it's very hard. You know, a lot of it is you know, getting to know people and going from there. Having a little bit of luck, you know, the guy that asked me to go from Transfield and come across and help administer a contract at Grosvenor Place, you know, that was my career path, just changed 180 degrees from what it was originally. Or what would I be doing if I didn't do that? I don't know. But you know, that's some of it. But just be prepared sometimes to take a risk and you know, make an informed decision about all that and make yourself comfortable with it. But you know, if you see something, you know, that you're certainly interested in, you know, make the effort to understand it the best you possibly can, and sometimes take a little bit of a risk. You know, it isn't necessarily, you know, we've got a guy who works for us who up until 3 years ago, he was a chef. You know, and he's in his late 30s. Well, thereabouts, I think. I don't actually ask people their ages because I'm not allowed to. You know, you know, he was a chef. He went through that whole course of cooking, etc., and got involved in being the, if you like, the sous chef and then the coordinating chef around major functions. And he enjoyed the concept of organising major functions where, you know, you're trying to get 1,000 meals out at the same time, at the right temperature, that the food's still hot, and you know, you've got to organise all the logistics around setting up temporary venues and etc. And that is project management. You know, you're organising you know, the delivery of a product, a meal to 1,000 people in that sense, but you've got to do everything, and you've got to think about, you know, breaking it down into elements. How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? Etc. And that whole concept, he sort of, oh, I like this. And went off and did a project management course, and And then, you know, at the AIPM conference, he met our managing director, and he just had a conversation with Steve, and you know, and you know, what he demonstrated was a willingness to learn. You know, what project management is more about, rather than, you know, what you're learning in textbooks, etc. And you know, the fundamental thing is, you know, is be prepared to do whatever you need to do to learn, and be told. You know, my philosophy with these guys, and hopefully, you know, they would support that, is I'm happy to help whoever needs help. Ask a question. You know, Lucas said, don't ask again and again. Yeah, ask again and again. I don't mind.
Okay,
I don't mind, you know, re-educating people or explaining things more. You know, I might get frustrated with you if you don't listen. However, but you know, it's about wanting to learn, wanting to do what's necessary. You know, you're not going to manage a project in our land. You know, the types of projects we have. You know, and some of them are you know, billion-dollar projects. You know, you're not going to have a major role on day one on a billion-dollar project. What you're going to do is part of a team that helps deliver a billion-dollar project. And you know, through the process of becoming a project manager and working in organisations and being given opportunities, and you know, developing a career path within an organisation, and it's very much what we're about with all our staff. It's about giving them challenges. On this project, we might need to do that. On that project, we might need to do a little bit more. And it's all about learning all the aspects and the philosophy of us as an organisation. And you know, each project management organisation is different. They have different visions. They have a different philosophy towards approach. And because, you know, the industry supports it, you know, the fact that we're delivering the projects that we do, which are technically challenging projects, you know, and we're trusted to do that by a lot of clients, means what they want is someone who adds value to their project at every step. Every piece of paper that comes across your desk, you need to think about. You need to do something with it in some form or another. It's not, we're not post boxes. We don't flick things on. You know, communication isn't sending an email to 20 people. That is the opposite of communication. Communicating with 20 people is fine, but you know, again, manage what you want people to do. Tell people, you know, there might be 20 people on email, but I want person 1, 2, and 3 to do this. I want person 4, 5, and 6 to do that, etc. Don't just broadcast emails. That is not communication. That is not learning. It's not adding value to projects. So,
yeah. And the only thing I have to add, always repeating what Rob said, just be ready. My first job came from, I was coaching cricket from my old school, and my one of the boys that I was coaching, his dad worked for FDC. He was a director at FDC. He goes, "Oh, you're doing construction management? I'll come along and have an interview." So I don't think you can prepare too much. It's people that you meet. You can put yourself out there and apply as much as you can, and something might go your way, but at the same time, it can be totally random.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've got to be ready to take the opportunities that present in front of you. And some of them may be because you've applied for a whole bunch of jobs. Great. Some of them might be because you go to an industry event, like what Mike did, went to an AIPM conference and met one of our directors there. Don't be afraid to take the opportunity that's in front of you, even if it's not the flavour that you ultimately want to get to. There are sometimes, as Rob said, a lot of steps to get to ultimately where you want to be at. I don't think Capital Insight would have hired me kind of, straight out of high school or when I was halfway through my degree. But, the professional that I had turned into by the time I'd finished my stint with Abbey Group, it was a different kettle of fish. So, I think don't be afraid to take those opportunities that they present to you, and just view it as a step towards, getting to where you ultimately want to get to.
Yeah, and we recognise that people coming into the industry at the level you're at, you don't know, and please accept that you don't know, all the things that are needed or everything that's required, etc. Having a degree is and getting a degree is proving that you're willing to learn, proving that you're willing to understand a process and etc. So keep that attitude all the way through everything you do. I learn some stuff, and it's Eric and I have a laugh at each other sometimes. He teaches me something on a day, and when I teach him something, I think, yes, You know, that's fantastic. You know, but have that attitude all the way through your career, because if you go to work and you learn something on a day, that's fantastic.
I'll probably finish off on one last question by a student that submitted just now. So Lillian asks, do you believe that it is essential to have contractor side experience in order to progress further on the client side?
No. I'll go around a bit, maybe in a circle, but I'll come back. Within our organisation, you know, we have people who, chef I've spoken about. We have people who are nurses who got into, through projects, developed into people who understand that upfront planning around, what health services are going to be delivered. We've got architects, we've got engineers, we've got project managers, we've got people who've done economic degrees, economists, programmers, etc. And it's the variety of the qualifications and experiences of our team that helps us deliver a project for a client. If everyone was the same, it'd be a boring old world. Similar from a company point of view, we're an amalgam of a whole lot of different qualifications, a whole lot of different experiences, etc.
Feed off each other.
Feed off each other and learn off each other and offer a better solution to a client because we've got a broader understanding of what's going on. Now, I'm not saying every job is going to be like that, but that relates to us as well. But I didn't have a construction management background when I started, and everyone when they start on day one don't have any background in that sense. It's a lot of it is, yes, you're qualified, yes, you're very good, and your marks, the fact you get through a bachelor's degree, it's no small step. But demonstrate to whoever it is that interviews you, your willingness to learn. And it's an attitude that we're looking for, combined with a technical understanding and the qualifications.
I don't have anything to add, Charles.
Rob the hirer, so he's the one
Well, I know we went a bit over time, but I'll just say, thank you guys. That's the most I can say. Like, on behalf of the Faculty of Built Environment and our best organisation, just to thank you guys for putting all this together and putting such a comprehensive presentation on project management to all these guys. And I know we kind of rushed through the questions, but I hope the students that are on this call found it very useful, and it will be recorded. So again, thank you very much for everyone that attended, and Rob, Lucas, and Eric. And yes, thank you.
Thanks for organising it, Charles.
Indeed.
Yes, thanks guys. No worries. Thank you, everyone.